Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Joko whenever you may be watching this. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to you. I am Brother Youssef, member of the Joko, a poet, a professor, cultural worker, just a brother in the city. And with me is my partner and comrade, the brilliant Tasha. Hi, Tasha. You're muted.
So it's good to have someone call you brilliant, be there to call you brilliant. You need that. Everybody needs that in their life.
Yes.
So I return and spread the accolade. Greetings, everybody. So glad to be here once again. Always, as we say, to put our drop in the ocean of resistance that is deep and wide as the centuries of resistance to colonialism, imperialism, white supremacy, capitalism, and all the structures in the world that have left it on the brink of absolute destruction and desolation and immiseration of human beings and animal beings and plant beings. And we are grateful and um, ever passionate and ever determined to add all that we can to the uh, reconstruction of a world that actually works for all the beings in it and the planet that supports all life, all of these things. And as we always begin with a bit of an invocation, and that is part of that invocation. We also always acknowledge all of the elements in our personal lives, our uh, lineage, our heritage, the people that taught us values, the people that taught us the world, the people that taught us social relations, all our families and family and parent groups and mentors that helped us to see the world in in its proper dimensions, um, and help us to become the justice loving people um, that we've become. We always acknowledge the African family lineage, the global African family, um, of which there have been, coming from which there have been so many champions and thinkers and movers that have pushed the envelope against these oppressors and these oppressive systems from the beginning of the onslaught. And we always acknowledge that, or come with the knowledge. Acknowledge is overused when we uh, look at and hold in regard the First Nations people unceded territories where we come as Africans to do liberation work for our family, our human family, and all of the human families of the planet. It's at their hospitality and at the hospitality of those ancestors and at the hospitality of those folk who are still doing the cultural work, the political work, the resistance work to preserve their culture, identity, and sovereignty. And so we always say those things before we begin. And we are so grateful and pleased to welcome back with us tonight Dr. Matsemela Odom. And our dear brother Yusuf usually takes the mic at this time. I'm not sure where our dear brother Yusuf went, but
Oh,
greetings,
I'm
brother.
right here.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
I'm right here, and we've mentioned the last couple of weeks, right? Took the time to point out the upcoming Black People's March on the White House, 17th annual, and so that's coming up this weekend. And as Tasha was saying, right? So we have, I think I can say, one of the organizers, Dr. Matsemela Odom here of in Pedum, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, member of the Black is Back Coalition, to talk about it. So, yes, welcome, Brother Matsemela, comrade.
Oh yeah, I just for I want to salute the new president of Impedum,
Okay.
Comrade Emmanuel Maku. So September, I transitioned from that position. We do have a new president of Impedum. Of course, I'm a lifetime member of Impedum, and
Mm-hmm.
Impedum is the mass organization of the Uhuru movement. I now, but I still am on the steering committee for Black is Back, leading the Black Community Control of the Police Working Group, uh, as well inside the African People's Socialist Party. I work in the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, doing some political education stuff underneath the leadership of Director Akile Anai, who runs our media apparatus inside the movement. But yeah, just say that. Just like I said, because some changes have happened since last time I was here.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So, what about the march coming up? It's this Saturday, right? And
Right.
this year there won't be a West Coast or West Coast mobilization.
No. This year there won't be a West Coast mobilization. However, we do have some things in the works in terms of like some intensive political trainings that we have
Mm-hmm.
taking place. In here in San Diego the following week, which includes a community rally that we're holding around the question of knowing your rights and pushing back against, ICE raids and as well as the occupation of the African communities by way of the by way of the National Guard occupations and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
So we move towards holding a community forum around many of these issues, even though we're not holding the West Coast demonstration this year.
Okay.
So that makes it even more important that we mobilize people for the Black People's March on the White House. So this year, November 1st, in Washington D.C., the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparation is going to be holding its 17th annual Black People's March on the White House, and the Sunday is going to be a conference that follows. This conference. Is going to tackle many of the top issues confronting the African community in the United States, African people worldwide, and just freedom-loving people in general.
Mm-hmm.
The theme for this year's march is "Don't Agonize, Organize." A state of So in this, we underscore that the U.S. is in a state of crisis. As well, internationally and domestically, there's a crisis. African communities are being occupied. ICE raids and attacks are taking place. Continued attacks on the movement, horror movement, and African people overall. So, in this moment, that we understand it's important for people to respond with a mass organization, and in terms of bringing a wealth of African communities and African people together, we see the Black is Back Coalition as the vessel through which that radical anti-colonial uh, uh, coalition of African people can take place.
Mm-hmm. Tasha, do you have a question? Okay, well, I have a follow-up on that. With in this political moment we're in, right? And Washington D.C. being one of the cities that the current regime decided to deploy National Guard troops, right? Um, has the has the coalition been organizing with local DC groups to participate in the march?
Yeah. In fact, one of our strongest centers is actually in Washington D.C. We have the African People's Socialist Party has a unit in Washington D.C. Both of our mass organizations, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the African National Women's Organization, have lead organizers on the ground there, as well as other people, other apparatus from our the Uhuru movement. But as well, we know that Philadelphia is not too far away. New York City isn't too far away. North Carolina and Virginia aren't too far away, where we have
Mhm.
fraternal organizations, people like Amanda Wallace and Operation Stop CPS, people like Betty Davis in New York City, Lisa Davis outside of Newark, New Jersey, other people up in Philadelphia who have, and to get the word out, they've been multiple what's called united outreach that has been taking place. Want to salute the comrades on the ground there, people like Comrade Kingozi, Comrade Emmanuel, who is the new president of Impedum, other comrades who have been postering, Comrade Soliana, who is in DC as well. People who've been postering, been getting out flyers, hundreds of flyers a week, scores of posters around Washington, D.C. Want to salute the owners of Sankofa Books, where on Friday there will be a press conference taking place and things of that sort. So yeah, it's there's been an intensive effort to get the word out, but also to attach it right. So the thing is, some organizations kind of see these national events like this, such as like the sole purpose of the organization is to organize national events and things of that sort. But
Mhm.
we essentially see these events in a different way. These events are important as the fact that they reflect a year's worth of work that our organization have been doing. So in a democratic way, this meetings like this allow for us to hold our work accountable to the people, present to the people the work that we're doing, but also present and bring people forward, into and call people into organization so that they can see the way forward. See, the thing is that much of what has been happening, uh, uh, um, much of what happens, has been counterinsurgency. And the thing about counterinsurgency is methods and efforts seek to push, demoralize people, push people out of political life, make people feel isolated, and things of
Mhm.
that sort. So that's why, for me, this mobilization is so important, really, to fight back against that isolation and
Mhm.
things of that sort.
Right. Tasha, anything or any thoughts? You're muted, I believe.
I'm waiting for an entree after you all have fleshed out the discussion around the march and collecting around the moment, um, to talk about, as we, the importance of the public demonstration, and also to ask Matsemela what he sees in terms of, like, for instance, with everyone is anticipating anxiously the drop of these SNAP benefits, the drop of that and various other kinds of material supports that people are
Mhm.
dependent on, that our community is dependent on, and what kind of impacts are seen in that on the people, psychologically, of course, materially, and what are organizations doing to set up mutual aid networks to try to absorb some of that impact. So I'm interested in that as well. What that looks like through and how that's developing through your eyes, Matsemela.
Uhuru, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I think that's actually, still hits at the central theme. Don't agonize, organize. And one thing I can say is, we're looking here about a year after the split verdict. What we understand is sort of a political victory of the Uhuru Three, but still understanding that it was a split verdict, not guilty on one charge and guilty on another charge, of which we are fighting back in the appeals court right now. But it's important to note that the ICE raids on the Uhuru movement in many ways were a canary in the coal mine against what we now see as this escalation of attacks against the democratic rights of people to speak out against the government, to assemble, and things of that sort. It's also important in that sense for us to underscore that the initial attacks that were taken against the Uhuru movement were by the Biden administration, and then a subsequent to that, we see that the Trump administration, of course, haven't wavered in their commitment. So that underscores what we've always said from the jump, that all of this is a question of colonialism and a colonial attack against African people, and the only way forward is through anti-colonial resistance and African anti-colonial activity. The one thing about the anti-colonial position is it should be able to bring together a wide swath of people around the African community, as well as people in support of African liberation, because colonialism essentially posits that, one group of people, live at the expense and advantage of other groups of people. And all freedom-loving people, no one should want those conditions. Now, I think the SNAP benefits question is absolutely important to bring up, because when you think about the Black is Back Coalition, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is once again an organization of organizations, over 19 organizations who are that make us up, and we're united over a 19-point agenda that we refer to as the um, National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination. Number 2 on that agenda speaks towards the defense of the Black families. Number 6 on that agenda, reparations. Number 8 on that agenda, nationalizing the banks. Number 9, full employment and a national minimum income. Number 10, right to housing. 11, halting gentrification. Number 12, we understand that Black businesses must be nurtured because of but we know that we also say in the Uhuru movement that we don't just buy Black power. That's also a demand towards Black businesses to be incubators for economic activity. We demand a replacement of a negative public policy of police containment with a positive public policy of economic development. And we know exactly what happens, right, in forms of counterinsurgency. There's that one Dead Press song where they say, you know exactly what's going to happen when the people cut the welfare off. People going to commit crimes, right? There's that one song, I think it's called A Police State. And to me, we have to understand the cutting on these benefits as a act of counterinsurgency, because the thing is that it's the one thing about counterinsurgency is about redirecting, right? The goal is to redirect a group of people's focus from the revolutionary anti-colonial leadership to the state, to the people that are in power, right? That's why for the Panthers, one of the things that really when you read J. Edgar Hoover's initial warning about the Black Panther program, it had to do with the programs that they had to feed the children, right, the Breakfast for Children program. So when we see that this cut to SNAP benefits, the question is sort of what's going to be the follow up, and things like that. How are they going to try to redirect this? But it also exposes the people out there who are unwilling to work in defense of the who are unwilling to work in the defense of African people, poor people, of the struggling masses. In the Hura movement, we have the concept of dual and contending power that we believe that we need to. So expanding what we understand as mutual aid and mutual support. We understand that we need to build in support of each other economically, politically, while we also contend with the power of the state to act on us. I mean, when you talk about that mutual support, mutual aid and things like that, we understand that just like when they came after the Panthers in July 29th, 2022, I mean, that day we literally were moving in, we were going to commence, where we did commence the African doula clinic in North St. Louis, because of the fact that so many Black children die in St. Louis every year that you can fill up, I think, something like 15 kindergarten classrooms. So we know that it's a place where like a third of the population lives off of $5 or less a day. You don't have grocery stores. People go and spend their money inside, Chinese restaurants. And, St. Louis got some of the best Chinese food in the world, but dang, I mean, that ain't food you should be eating every single day, egg foo young sandwiches and stuff like that, because you don't have access to fresh fruit and vegetables. So what we did, and we're doubling down on our support for the people. We operate a free community garden. We operate a farmer's market for the people over there in North St. Louis, and we have the apparatus to expand that, not just here, but in North, and not just here in North America, but in South Africa, where we have 4 or 5 different branches of Impedum, and they're doing the same thing, community gardens, and things of that sort, because we know that we have to look out for the community, but we also know that we have to use us looking out for ourselves as a political spring for us to underscore the importance of really self-government and self-determination, as opposed to what we know that they would like us to do, is to sort of cower and admit defeat and things of that sort, and go looking for handouts from them. But I do think that this situation really is a pox on both houses.
Mm-hmm. So, don't agonize, organize, right? And that's a message directed to the people, right? To the masses. But the march is on the White House. Are demands being made, or taken to the White House, as it were?
Yeah. Indeed. There are some important demands. I don't really want to salute Chairman Omale Shatella for his call that he presented, calling on African people to attend this year's Black People's March on the White House. In it, he argues that the crisis of the social system is being exemplified by the breakdown of its foundational structures, philosophical principles of free speech, religion, assembly, and association enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. We know that they were never intended for African people who existed as enslaved property within the U.S. This is why, the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act were created in 1964-65. This is why we see that stuff coming under attack right now. This is why we see in clear violation of the Posse Comitatus Act that African communities are under are under attack or under occupation. So our demands are embedded inside the Black people, the national agenda for self-determination. They're embedded inside the 19 demands that the Black is Back Coalition put forward, many of which are also reflected inside the 19-point political agenda. Freedom to all political prisoners, reparations, African economic self-determination, and drop the charges against the Uhuru movement, the Uhuru 3, repeal the Foreign Agent Registration Act that's being used to attack not just the Uhuru 3, but a wealth of other organizers. We know that sort of like, because it's interesting, right? Because I don't know what the Supreme Court has ruled yet, or when that ruling is coming out. But they seem very prepared to gut the Voting Rights Act. And maybe we could talk about this, because it seems like the only response that the Democrats in California have is like, well, we'll do redistricting in our favor or something like that, right? Neither is really seems to be a mass argument. I mean, I guess if it works and it helps, I guess, you know what I mean? But
it's a system, you're right, response, right?
Right, right.
And I mean, so the Republican Party, the far right wing, has used it forever, because they, even in the U.S. context, they're a minority party, right? The Republicanism, certainly since the mid 20th century, isn't popular in that way. So now the Democrats are like, okay, we're going to gerrymander, screw the rules too, just to keep up, though, right? Just to keep up.
Right.
And again, it's another example of the
difficulties as more
what's that,
connectivity issues from my screen now. I don't hear and see. Okay, looks like Matsemela has reconnected.
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're all good. But again, it's just another sign of the crisis, right? Is Illinois is going to do it, and there aren't enough, and some analysts are saying there really aren't enough Democratic states. There are just so many so-called red states that they can carve up, and then this Voting Rights Act, as you mentioned. That's long been a target of the Chief Justice, right? Of Chief Justice Roberts. So, they're likely poised to continue this, long planned and executed, retrenchment, as you said, counterinsurgency. And, this is, sort of the end goals of the counterinsurgency, right? A full retrenchment. With the extreme right coming to the reins of the apparatus of the state and all that. So, but you do everything you can also within the system, right? And partly take it to its limits, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the central thing here is to raise the contradiction, right? We know those things
Yes.
weren't made for us. We know the Constitution wasn't made for us, but we also know that on paper they say this is a democracy. I was listening to Chairman talk about it somewhere recently, where in many ways what we're doing is we're waging a struggle of socialist democracy against colonial democracy, right?
Hmm.
Sort of, true self determination. We say the highest form of democracy is self determination, and
Hmm.
waging that against a system that at best suggests that participation in a colonial process is what freedom looks like. But the thing is
Right.
that, see, with the Trump agenda and the Trump administration, they've even pulled that off, right? They pulled the veneer of that off, and as Chairman has said elsewhere, that's important. It's important for them to come out there and just be clear and say, well, rights are only for white people.
Right.
Because when they say it, at least it clears it up for people and makes it absolutely clear about what we need to do. See, Blacks Back Coalition was formed in 2009 in response to the election of President Barack Obama, at a time which people were telling us, we had to step aside, not push our own political agenda, and instead just do what Trump. I mean, because we don't want to rock the boat for President Obama. But that veneer, that mask has been taken away. I think that contradiction isn't there anymore. Yeah, I really think. I mean, even in what's going on right now with this shutdown or things like that, you do see a much increase in militancy of the people, and a and an unapologetic nature of the masses of people to stand on the principles, and also to demand that their electoral representatives, their
Hmm.
political representation, represent the demands that they believe in, as opposed to just these same the same old status quo. And that's what happens. See, we're in a moment of political crisis. In moments of
Hmm.
crisis, the government, the social system cannot operate the way in which it normally operates. So, I mean, we see the occupations, we see the mass deportations, you see the unaliving of people over in Palestine, but because of the heightened state of crisis that the social system is in, if you notice, it's not getting the same results that it used to have gotten, right? Which is to sort of push people away, push people into inactivity, and things of that sort. People are emboldened, and that's why what we say. People say you got to agitate, educate, and organize, but the truth is, I heard Chairman say earlier this year, is that the stuff is so acute that you don't even have to agitate anymore. When ICE raids are happening at your workplace, and things of all this other stuff is taking place, ICE raids and the National Guard and who was it that gave the Nazi salute?
Right. Well, see, all that increased repression and
Right.
increased harm does its own political education, right? And
Correct. So it does its agitation. Now our goal is just get out there with the people.
right,
We got to get out there with the people and bring the
and
people.
there's a lot of discontent. There's a lot of
Right, right,
discontent right now because none of it is popular. And
right,
again, and the Democratic Party is even less popular, and partly because they aren't in opposition, and
right.
people are ready to oppose this. Socialism is popular in the United States, right? Or at least people aren't as afraid of it anymore.
Right.
So and again, the current regime, there's the the increase in harm is off the charts, but the contradictions are so incredibly clear, right? Again, this open rule of billionaires. What is it, like 90% of the cabinet is billionaires, and there's somebody who's like a multi-hundred millionaire, not quite a billionaire. I don't think it's ever
Yeah.
been, or it's been a long time that the contradiction has been that clear, right?
Yeah, we there was something I remember them saying, the richest person in the history of the world was Mansa Musa, but then I guess it was, what's the guy that makes Tesla? He's supposed to be closing in
Yeah.
on the wealth of Mansa Musa,
Mm-hmm.
but he's doing it by way of essentially taking control of the mineral resources of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But all that's happening at the same time, which Africa is on the move, not just on the continent, but Africans overall are on the move, and people, we got to call people in. The importance of this program is so important because as we talked about in a previous time I was on here, all that other stuff that's being allowed by way of, I don't know if it's algorithms or whatever it is, to get put in front of the people, and just win them to nonsense. It's frustrating to some extent, but it's also It's also inspiring in a sense that sort of I'm in an organization that I know has the ability to bring our people forward to a better position. Now we just got to get to the people even more. We have. There's a way through which 16 years ago, when we held the first Black People's March in the White House, many people were afraid to stick their neck out with this sort of criticism of the liberal left. But now, as Fidel Castro once said, history will absolve us. History has absolved us. And helps shows us the way forward. But yeah, this is all very, very important conversation we're having.
So now the march is taking place in Washington and on the White House with, the fascist right. Are there contingencies for repressive acts during the march, from the state?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a part of that apparatus, but I do know that, we are an organization that, is known for, amongst many things, carrying ourselves with the highest level of discipline, but also preparation, and things of that sort. But oftentimes the way in which they get you isn't from the outside, but also on the inside, right? Bring agent provocateurs and things like that. But if you remember, I think it was 2022, maybe, when we held the Black People's Conference. Maybe it was 2023, but I think it was 2022. And we had chairman had gave a speech. I think it was 2022 because it was in August, and chairman had laid down the fact that political movements have two strengths: the ideology and the people, right? The ideology and the people. So as long and once that ideology begins to grip the people, it becomes a material force. So there are contingencies, but I mean, you're talking about as you know, a movement been around for 60 years, and it stands on top of a struggle of African people that's 600 years long. We are prepared.
And I asked the question partly because there's talk, discourse, speculation that this regime is waiting for specifically, a Black-led or Black identified, African identified march demonstration, something like that, right? So as a
Okay.
pretext
Yeah.
for repression.
Well, Chairman has said, it's important for us to go. People should go out there and read that Trump memorandum. I think if anything, people can do in terms of their own, um, uh,
You're talking about that
uh,
presidential memorandum?
yeah, the presidential memorandum countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence, right? So as you note, it is at this moment then sort of a political necessity to be mindful of those efforts, not in a way that sort of is fearful, but in a way that makes sure that it does not knock organizations off of the objective. And our objective is to win liberation for African people. It's not just to yeah. So I think that's important. So I think it is important. And I would suggest that people go and read that presidential memorandum on what's called countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. In fact, like I said, here in San Diego on Sunday, November 9th, when we have that we're going to be holding a political rally and community forum. One of the things we'll be discussing at the community forum will be that memorandum. So yeah, so I think that that's important. But I also know that even though even though they have forced so many Africans out of Washington D.C., Africans still make up about 43% of the city.
I thought it was more than that. Still.
Well, yeah. I mean, now you're talking about the surrounding areas. I think that percentage goes up, but the last number I saw was that there was a dip to around 41, but it's risen up to about 43%. But like you said, it could be more. It could be more, especially maybe they might not even be including students and things of that sort inside their calculation. So the whole point is that sort of we're an organization that's built ourselves off of a unity with the masses of African people out there, and the people in situations like that become your biggest defense. I mean, you've been to the march, I think, and you take that march and you walk through the streets, and the way in which and people, it's a national expectation. There's people that you see every single year at the march. People come out on their bicycles. People come out on their skateboards and their scooters, and their homemade signs. Reflecting the demands and the positions that we have as the Black is Back Coalition, expressing their unity with us. So yeah, I mean, we know that they are looking for this sort of stuff, but we also know that the thing that's defined us is the Blacks Back Coalition specifically, or more generally, or specifically the APSP, is an aversion to adventurism and aversion to a reckless political activity that could limit our could knock us off political course. But I think that the questions you raise are all important.
Well, that there are plenty of offenses outlined in that memorandum that are, usefully vague, right? Whatever is meant by what, what extreme racial ideology or whatever they're calling it, right? Extreme gender ideology. I mean, just, everything they want to go out. Anti-Christianity. I mean, so you can't be an atheist or a non-Christian. I mean, just, it's just the anti-traditional family. I mean, what does that mean? So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if does it mean his adultery and his multiple
right.
wives? I don't know if that's what that means.
It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean.
It doesn't mean that.
What's their name? The Attorney General. It doesn't mean her living arrangement. And she, as an unmarried woman, so I'll just leave it at that, right? It doesn't mean that. So anyway, it isn't just the march, right? We've been talking about the march, but there's some events around the march, right?
Yeah. So we got the march on Saturday, beginning at Meridian Park, also known as Malcolm X Park. So it's beginning at noon. It's beginning on Saturday at 11 a.m. There in Malcolm X Park, also known as, I think to some, as Meridian Park. But the day before, at noon at Sankofa Books, 2714 Georgia Avenue Northwest, which is right across the street from Howard University, which is the bookstore owned by Haile Garima and his partner, who, like I said, name slips me after a long day of teaching. As you know, you got so much stuff in there that some of the stuff slips out. But their bookstore is right across the street. That's where the press conference is going to be. And then that evening on the 31st, which is tomorrow, there's going to be a pre-rally at the 1 DC Black Worker Center. That's 2500 Martin Luther King Avenue Southeast, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Like I said, the march is on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and then on Sunday, the Sunday is going to be virtual. That's going to begin at 11 a.m. Eastern time as well. The Black People's Conference. If you, whether you're going to attend in person or not, go to blackisbackcoalition.org and register. The registration, whether you're attending in person or not, is a Zoom registration. It does ask you, if you do the Zoom registration, whether you attend in person or not, but it's important to fill out that registration so you can be a part of the even if you can't go on Monday, you can be part of the conference on Sunday.
On Sunday, right on. Well, Tasha's dealing with some Wi-Fi issues. You know how that happens, right? This virtual world.
Trust me, we live in this. They make you pay all this for Wi-Fi, and then if a kid used the microwave, your internet can go out. You know what I mean? And that's and no matter what they say, but that lets you understand like the way through which we really got to struggle for something different, because they talk all this countering terrorism and all this other nonsense, but I can't stop all these scams from coming to my phone. You know what I mean? I'm sitting here thinking like, this is crazy.
That might be coming from state actors.
Exactly. I mean, there's more now than later. So it really does heighten the responsibility for us to continue to just look for a world beyond this one, and to win people to understand that that's not a regressive question, right? The selection question is, how can we harness the resources that we have in this world to create a better world, a more equitable world. Right, that doesn't mean you got to go, live in a tree in Humboldt County eating granola or something like that. Even though if you do, I do like granola, and I think Humboldt County is beautiful.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, but it ain't for everybody, right? And ain't everybody gonna do it, right? I mean,
Exactly.
People, that's just not gonna happen that way.
Right.
Yeah, I did have another question to ask you. the march, uh, uh, groups in solidarity. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
What kind of outreach to groups that are in solidarity, supporting that would be marching with Black people.
Yeah, so that's the really amazing thing about the Black People's March on the White House, the way through which it brings out people. So as you know, the Black is Back Coalition is an organization of organizations. Inside our organization, we have over 17 organizations.
Mhm. Full disclosure: Joko Collective is a member of the Black is Back Coalition.
Yes. So Joko Collective, we got the New Abolitionist Movement, Betty Davis, we have African National Women's Organization, we have um, uh, 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 um, uh, uh, even Black Panther Party of San Diego, we have International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, but we have, but we also have organizations that we know are fraternal organizations that we work with. The Black Workers Choir, Lucy Murphy. We have the in Cobra, the Coalition on Black Reparations in America, the People's Coalition against deed theft, the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, led by Marsha Coleman Adebayo, out of Bethesda, Maryland. Montgomery County, where African cemeteries are being completely overrun. The Universal African Peoples Organization. So there's a wealth of organizations that are part of the coalition, but probably just as many other organizations that aren't members of the coalition, but for sure are our fellow travelers with the coalition, and they're all going to be out there with us. I love the way through which there's other organizations, even organizations that don't necessarily represent U.S. based organizations. Always, the president of Impedum right now is born in Emmanuel Maku, born in Sudan. He's the first president of Impedum born on the continent, and he met the Uhuru movement at the march.
Right on.
As a person who was traditionally an organizer within the South Sudanese community, he met us and moved and was able to bring those skills into the work of the Uhuru movement, the Black is Back Coalition, which seeks as broad a sector of African people around the world. We always get people from Biafra. They really unite with the call, especially with the critique of colonialism and the pushback against the borders of Africa that have been imposed upon people. So it's such, and then also other indigenous people. I was just looking at a photo I took, must have been 2022, with some indigenous activists from I think they're from like the Amazon over in Brazil, and they happen to be in DC because of other political events. But they saw the event and the Black People's March, and they knew that the Black People's March was something that they had to be at. And they didn't only speak Portuguese; they spoke like an indigenous version of Portuguese from North Brazil. So, but they knew that it was important for them to be there with us, and things of that sort. So
I feel like that's so critical, right? To reestablish, strengthen those international connections, and that recognition, right? With the world recognized. Africans here, U.S. Africans in struggle, right? In struggle for liberation and world, struggling for the global proletariat, and how that's been, the attempts to damage that, right, and to break those ties, to make us feel like our politics stop at the territory of U.S. borders. So that's so
right. Right. That, I mean, that's critical towards us winning African liberation. Chairman
Mm-hmm.
Omar Taylor lays this down in 1977 in a document we have called Tactics and Strategies. It was a speech that he gave at the 1977 April 1977 National Black Radical Organizers Conference,
Mm-hmm.
organized by Max Stanford, known to some as Muhammad Ahmed, at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And so Chairman gives this thing, and he says the first duty of to win Black liberation is to win the masses of people back into political life.
Mm-hmm.
We see how this coalition does that. This march does that. Second is to win leadership of that struggle. But one of the other steps is to uh, 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 delegitimize, the moral authority of the United States around the world, to build
Yeah.
solidarity for the African struggle inside the United States, outside the African community, and internationally outside of the borders of the United States. When we think about the success of the Haitian Revolution, the African
Mm-hmm.
Workers' Revolution in Haiti, what really set it apart was the fact that the international support came in support of the rebels, not in support of the colonizers, and they were able to use that against each other, and say in such a brilliant different ways by exposing and playing against those contradictions, and that's the same thing that's the sort of we've laid down, and that's
Mm-hmm.
central to the strategy of organizing that we've laid down. I'll be presenting at the Black People's Conference on Sunday around the question of Black community control of the police. Following my presentation, there will be Comrade Odom, who will be presenting as a part of the fight for free speech. Hands Off Uhuru, It's Not Over, outlining the successes of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, but also the way forward as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all going to be on the agenda for Sunday?
I,
Oh
you know,
yeah, you are. I just saw something.
we got to look at the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, on community control of education.
Okay. There we go. Well, you know what? We're coming up on an hour. You got any closing comments?
No, I mean this is just want to always salute the Joko and underscore the fact that this is part of what we're dealing with. We're talking about they wanted to throw Chairman in prison for what they intended would have been his natural life for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years or some odd in prison for what they admit was not any physical acts, right? No acts of violence, weapons, any of that, just ideas. Having the gall to hold ideas in opposition to the U.S. political mainstream, and that's why it's important for us to stand up. But that's why it's important for us to stand up collectively, right? As we continue to raise those contradictions. I mean, when the nature of the oppression that we face as African people is how it's been, I mean, Africans ain't got to do anything but talk to get in trouble. I mean, shoot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you go all the way back to the moment of the colonial enslavement of African people here in the United States, literally was that. I was teaching a Black music class today, and we were talking about the way in which the enslaved people had to carry the cauldrons into the into the forest and sing into the cauldrons, just
Mm-hmm.
because the voice alone was a crime. But that also speaks towards what Michel Foucault referred to as the counter discourse of prisoners, right? Foucault, a lot of people look at Foucault as a person who sort of understood power and critiqued power, but he went on about critiquing power. He laid down what's called the counter discourse of prisoners, and suggesting that sort of at the moment the role of the prison is to stop the inmates from talking, to sort of live under fear. So much that so they had, as you know, the panopticon, and eventually you didn't even have to put nobody in the panopticon, because the people would discipline themselves and discipline others. He says, but at the moment that, but at the moment that they begin to talk, you begin to break the power of the system. So that's what's important for us to get out there and exercise our freedom of speech.
There you go. So before we go, because we don't want to leave unremarked, recently we had the passing of our, a great revolutionary, now ancestor, Assata Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
And so, honor and respect to Comrade Assata. And if you are in the Los Angeles area.
Yes, we'll be there on Sunday. You going to be there?
I don't know if I'm going to be there. It depends on what time. It depends on what time I got to go to my acupuncture. That's what it depends on. So we'll see. But it's happening, right? Honoring Assata Shakur, a life of courage and resistance tribute event, 4276 Crenshaw Boulevard. I think in the space that Tasha and I have been wanting to get a look at for a while from the inside. And so we just want to make that announcement for anybody who's local, and you might want to swing by to honor Assata, and let's popularize her ideas and her resistance.
I was just up there recently. Right. Yeah, I was just up there recently at the Soul and what's the place? Soul and something library. The bus riders.
Yeah, the bus riders. Strategy and Soul.
Strategy and Soul. Yeah, right there on MLK. And this will be down the street from there. Mm-hmm. So we'll be there. African National Women's Organization is one of the co-organizers, and we expect Comrade Mwezi to be able to.
Do you remember? Do you know what time it starts?
I need to look into that. I think it starts something like 2 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I have it right here. 12. It begins at 12 p.m. this Sunday.
Okay, so it begins at 12. Okay.
Yeah, 12 p.m. this Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
But that's also the Black People's Conference on Zoom is this Sunday also, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to work something out where we're somewhere in Los Angeles to present our session so that we can make it to the Assata event subsequent to that.
So by the time this event is starting in LA, we're at the conference, it'll be about 2 o'clock.
Right.
Or 2 o'clock Central.
Right.
3 o'clock Eastern.
Right. So the conference will be going down. This will be coming up, but I mean, I we African people, so I surely don't expect.
We'll be on African time. It's better for your health. It's better for your health. I mean,
it really is. It really is.
Irish time.
Really is.
It's all better for your health. Yeah,
it really is. That's the healthiest thing in the world. When you show up, you think, oh man, you think did I miss the event? Was the event tomorrow? And then you give it a good 2 hours and everybody show up.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
All right, Brother Matsemela, we appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
And actually want to bring you back to talk about Impedum, right? And I mean, it's very exciting to hear there's a new president. You talked about the multiple chapters in Azania, South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I would just love to talk a little more about Impedum.
Right on.
And its international character, right? And
yes. I mean, we're in at least 6 countries on the continent right now. Right, maybe more than that. Mm-hmm. Maybe more than that, but actively for real is organizing at least 6 countries on the continent.
So we got to bring you back to that conversation.
Right, which is just so important because oftentimes so many people speak of Africa from afar. They speak of us here and Africans there. Right. Understanding we're all African.
And completely forget the Caribbean, right? I mean, sometimes that's the most isolated place when it's right there, right?
Which is so interesting because I tell when I talk about it in class, I say we understand it's isolated nowadays, but when you understand the way in which the ocean works, it's in the center of the world, and it's still in the center of the world. And salute to all the people in the Caribbean right now, dealing with the hurricane and all this other stuff taking place down there. So it's important.
And all this other stuff taking place down there. But there too, where the contradictions are being laid bare, and
yes, and that's why the colonial question is important.
Mm-hmm.
The colonial question that we're raising with the Blacks Back Coalition is important. It allows you to see the colonial domination, but it also allows you to see the neo-colonial contradictions, and what we need to do to move forward. That's correct.
Yes. Well, right on. Thank you.
All right.
I'll go ahead and close. And I'll close the way I usually do, quoting Bob Marley. Revelation reveals the truth. It takes a revolution to make a solution. Make a revolution, y'all. Peace.